across the pond. You know, you just have to love technology because it does bring knitters and crocheters together from around the world. And so I want to welcome another newcomer to the Planet Pearl party line on her very first visit here. So welcome, Sarah. Welcome to your very first visit to the Planet Pearl party line to talk about what I think is a very cool idea and a very unique. I guess I can't say very unique because that's redundant. My son would, who's a writer, would yell at me for that. A unique idea in Stitch dictionaries. The new Crochet Stitch Dictionary that was just released here in the United States and around the world. and and I have to say, you know, Sarah, I was when I got an email from the publisher here in the US, Interweave, I thought, oh, you know, because I crochet a little bit, but not a lot. I thought, oh, a Stitch dictionary. I'm not so sure I need another Stitch dictionary, but let me take a look at it. I think Stitch Dictionary doesn't really describe this book. It's more than that. Tell us about the journey to this book because it's really so much more than that.
Oh, Beth, that's really kind of you to say that. And really, I think one of the things that encouraged me to work with Interweave was to actually make it more than a dictionary. The journey, I guess, starts with my background in teaching, and so as I've carried on and come out of teaching in classrooms and teach workshops in knitting and crochet, I've become very aware of how difficult it can be for people to access the actual technique of crochet just from instructions. You know, it's a skill that actually relies, I think, quite heavily on some visual input as well.
Yeah, and I know that you teach a lot. I know you do a lot of workshops, and I would agree. I think that crochet is much harder to learn from line drawings even than knitting is.
Yeah, absolutely, because you're often, I think with crochet, because you're working into either a series of chains or a series of mesh or a series of spaces, and if you're new to it, then people are often not confident about, well, should I put the hook there or should I put it there? With knitting, your stitches are on one needle and you're using the other needle to do something with those. And so in that sense, it's a lot more straightforward. But I think crochet is open to much more interpretation. And over the years, as I've been teaching workshops, I've become aware of that with people. And, you know, sort of on the day when I've been teaching, had to find ways around that for people. And so when I started to talk to the publishers about creating this book, I was very sort of clear that we would need something that was not only written down for people, but you could actually sort of almost see in action as well.
Yeah, and I think that was what really surprised me is because normally when you get a Stitch dictionary, it'll have, you know, line by line for the repeats, but it's just written out for you and with the abbreviations, and if it's crochet, the charts, which for people who knit and who want to try crochet, I have to say that crochet charts can be really scary
Yes,
because, you know, especially all the spike.
yes, I think they can be really daunting because, you know, a knitting chart will be broken down into those little squares, and as long as you do whatever it says in the square, then hopefully, you know, you're going to get the result. But with the charts, it's a little bit more open to interpretation, and so that was the idea behind putting different colours onto the line or the round that you're working, so that when somebody was trying to access each stitch, it became evident where the cluster, which stitch the cluster was coming out of, for example, or where the chains led from and where they were going to, so that it actually made sense and joined up with the steps and the photographed steps.
I accidentally muted myself. I don't know how I keep doing that. So, but Sarah, you work in both knit and crochet, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
how did you
so yeah,
how did you
so
get
I
started? How did you get started?
well, in knitting originally, many moons ago, when I was about 6 or 7, my mum was really keen that I should learn to knit, and much to her great amusement now, I absolutely hated it. And just got incredibly frustrated by the fact that she would sit every night knitting away and that I just couldn't seem to get the hang of it. And then one day, and funnily enough, I was only talking to somebody at the weekend at a workshop about this, I just had this sort of breakthrough moment and just thought, I'm doing it. I'm not dropping any stitches. I'm actually creating something that looks, like a fabric. And so I just sort of went from there and carried on knitting into my late teens. I used to knit a lot of my own clothes at that time. And then I left home, went to university, and funny enough, didn't knit while I was at university. And it wasn't until I'd finished my degree, which was in English literature, and met up with some friends of my husband's, and one of their fiancés was a knitter, and she said, "Oh, do you knit?" And I said, "Well, actually, I used to." And she said, "Oh, I'm absolutely crazy about it." And I have to say that since then, I haven't stopped. And so I trained as a primary school teacher and taught in primary schools for quite a long time, but then found that I was looking for something more creative in my life, and so started to teach adults, both in further education colleges, and I set up some textile and some knitting courses. Then I joined Rowan Yarns and taught some workshops for them. And so over the last 5 to 6 years, I've been able to transfer that teaching into workshops and into writing. And I'm now full-time designing. I design for several magazines over here in the United Kingdom, and I've worked on several books now.
And I don't.
It's almost been like having a second career. I've been incredibly lucky in some of the people that I've met, and although sometimes I wish that I'd trained in textiles right from the beginning, fortunately for me at sort of 51, I'm now able to have, as I say, a second career, and so my enthusiasm for it is just huge.
Well, it's always nice to do something that you love during the day. So, it's
Yes,
amazing
yeah,
how many people come to that and get to come to that later in life. It's also always it's surprising to me how many designers in the UK have come through Rowan Yarns. So, which is quite
yes,
the
yes.
excuse me, hotbed of design. We had Louisa Harding on yesterday, also came through Rowan Yarns. So,
Oh, okay, yes, yes.
um,
I think that Rowan are unique in that because they are very much a design-led company. I think that once you become involved with them, they are very keen to nurture talent, and they have always been very generous, in supplying yarns and supporting me when I've been writing books, or designing pieces and that have been commissioned for magazines and those sorts of projects. And so I think as a company, they are very keen to develop individual talents. And I know that they sponsor a lot of textile students here in the
yeah.
UK,
Yeah, I know their
to that
studio
end
line
that
of
have been,
magazine. They do. I know they
yeah,
do a lot of. They do. They showcase the contest work of textile students, which is always very
that's
interesting to
right.
see
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
A lot of cutting
yeah,
edge design there. So let's show
yes,
people. Let's give people a little peek at what we're talking
Okay.
about in terms of the how this book is different in
Yeah.
terms of how it's laid out. And I just pulled a couple of pages to give people an idea. I think I'm in the right screen here. Hmm. Oh, unless I'm in the wrong screen. There I go. So, so for example here, this is one of the things I wanted to show people is that it's not flat drawings. You actually use photographs here, which I
Yes.
love
Yes.
because you really see, and although obviously a photograph is two dimension, um, that it has, uh, you get that sense of where the hook is actually going
Yes.
as opposed to in the drawing, which
Yes.
I find the drawing is very confusing because you can't really, the yarn is drawn with like two lines. It's like which part of that is actually where you're going.
Is actually
So
where it's going. And I think you picked a really good one there, actually, Beth. That 5-star, the Marguerite and the 5-star Marguerite. Because if you were to just look at the chart, you've got those what we call legs coming off, and it's not abundantly clear, is it, where they might be going if you were new to that stitch. Whereas if you've got the sample at the top, and you've also got me working with the hook there, you can actually sort of track where those different legs or spokes, if you like, where they're actually going into the crochet, can't you?
yeah, if I had just looked at that chart and because I know basic crochet and I love to use crochet as trim on my knits. But if I had looked at just that
Yes.
chart,
Yeah.
I would skip past this page and say, "Yeah, there's no way," and I would keep going. But
Yeah.
because I can see the picture, I
Yes.
mean, I look at this and I go, "Oh, I see what she's doing here," which is,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It makes a huge difference, and I mean, just how
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean, the
And
difference between a photograph and a line drawing. Yeah, and Helene
yes.
says, "Very
Yes.
helpful," with an exclamation mark, which Helene, I would have put like 60 exclamation points after this because I fully agree. It is such a dramatic difference with the photograph.
Yes.
I'm going to apologize. I have a very
Yeah.
dry throat. So hang on a second while I
Yeah.
get something to drink.
I had Phil, who was my photographer. He was so patient, and I mean, it was quite a lengthy process, but it was the one thing that I really wanted to convey in the book was that idea of breaking those skills down so that they are achievable, rather than sort of thinking, oh gosh, it gets a bit hard now. And in fact, the layout of each chapter is very much based on building through those skills. So if you start at the beginning of, say, the fans and shells, they will be very simple fans and shells, and then work towards the more complicated or complex stitches. And some of those are complex enough, in fact, that we've illustrated them, using two colours, so that again, the crocheter who might be learning or checking on that can clearly identify where those stitches need to go.
Yeah, and I pulled another example because I think the thing too is learning how to read crochet charts. I think can be
Yeah,
a little intimidating, even more so than
sure.
like learning how to read lace charts or cable charts are for knitters.
Yes,
And I thought this was a good example of where you show the finished chart, but then you build the chart row by row so that you can
row
actually
by row. Yeah,
see what's going on and you break it down into steps and you see how that's being
yes,
created and you can see it
definitely.
in the photograph and see the corresponding row of the chart and then you see the finished
Yes,
product which and then it's done in
yes,
yeah I think that yeah and of course and Shannon said I love the peacock stitch which I do too So, and Helene,
It's beautiful, isn't
why
it?
does that only have one exclamation point there, Helene, where you say this is wonderful? You know that's better. It's better than that. So, I mean, this is just I don't know why somebody didn't think of this before. Okay, there's those. There, Helene gave me the exclamation points I'm looking for. I mean, because this just seems to make so much sense. I mean, for any if for in
Yeah.
terms of learning crochet, I mean, this can only help spread the love, right, and bring a lot more
Yes,
people to the
absolutely.
craft, right?
Yeah, and I think you've almost you've put your finger on it, really, because I think probably what has happened over the years is that people have thought, as they've been teaching themselves, oh, it would be really useful if this and if that. Whereas I think because I've been in so many workshop situations, when I was approached to do the directory, it then became a very important sort of premise, if you like, that it did actually contain that information, because I had been aware on so many occasions that was where people would struggle, and also I guess the frustration that people might feel. They come to a workshop, they've got you on hand, and you can sort of talk about how to tackle things, but obviously people for the majority of the time are going to probably be working with a book at home, and so they almost need they need that voice of somebody saying, actually, this is where you put the hook. I mean, if we look at that one, the Peacock one, your point about it's easier to read knitting charts is very valid here, because suddenly, you've got all these chains going off at the side, and I think that's one of the things where people get confused as to where they might have to start or stop a new row.
Yeah,
So hopefully
exactly.
the way
Yeah.
that those steps break down, it really does. And also, I think that whole thing about turning chain with crochet,
Mhm.
and having to sort of compensate and make certain numbers of chain act as if they're certain stitches. I know when I was teaching myself, I sort of thought, I'll do it, but I'm not entirely sure why I'm doing it. It's like when children learn to read, they can decode the words, they can say the cat sat on the mat, but if you say to them at a certain age, where did the cat sit, they just look at you as if to say, but I've read it to you. Whereas the comprehension comes a bit later, and that's what I wanted to be able to do with the dictionary.
Yeah, and I think, you can only get so far with, even because the videos like on YouTube are
Yeah.
a great teaching device. And I have over 100
Yeah.
videos on YouTube, and you can teach
Yeah.
the basics. You can teach a single crochet and a double crochet and a half double crochet. But the problem becomes when you
Uh-huh.
get to more, you can't teach 1,000 different stitches one at a
No.
time. And that becomes the issue, is when
No.
you want to do something that has 20 or 30 different stitches in it. Like you
Yes.
really couldn't do 200 videos on these 200 different stitches. And this, of course, is a drop in the bucket, really, to all of the
Yeah.
individual crochet stitches. This is really, to me, as close as you can get to having somebody sitting next to you showing
Next to
you
you. Yeah.
these
Yeah.
stitches without you actually having to memorize them. Because even if they sat next to you,
Absolutely.
what are
Yeah.
the odds you're going to remember them when you get home, right? So yeah, so it's, yeah, and Kate says this is beautiful, which I completely agree. That's my favorite. I love the fans and shells in crochet.
Yes.
That and
Yes.
the fillet work are just my favorite things about crochet, and my very favorite
Yeah. I
things
think
about crochet. Ah, they're just,
they do. They look beautiful, and they look beautiful in so many different sorts of yarns as well, I think.
yeah.
And again, that was something that I wanted to do with the book, which was to the little introductions to each stitch, to sort of to talk about really different stitches, their relationship with other ones. You'll often find that I've said it's similar, or this is kind of a step on from one that you've done earlier. And I've also tried to suggest um, yarn weights and yarn types that might work particularly well with certain stitches.
Yeah, and for people in the room, how many people already know how to crochet? Can you just let me know if you already know how to crochet? Because one of the things that I really loved about this, unlike a lot of stitch dictionaries, which basically just have chapters of stitches, and they're what Candy does. So to have chapters of, and Helene's a beginner, and Selena does too, is yeah. And I consider myself. I mean, I crochet, but I consider myself a beginner. I don't do anything really fancy either. And Shannon, yeah, she wants to learn, but gets intimidated. And I'll say this is a really great book, even for people who have never crocheted, which is not something I would
Yeah,
normally say about a stitch dictionary. And because
no,
it really starts with the essential skills, like right from holding the hook and working its
yes,
way, up from there,
true.
and which is very unusual in a stitch dictionary. I mean, it's truly, starts from scratch, which you never ever find in a stitch dictionary. And I also want to say one of the things I love about the front part of this book is it has a little mini, which people who are tuning in later aren't going to see this, but I'll show you in my little webcam here. Is it has a little thumbnail of every single stitch right up front, which is always
Yes,
nice when
yes,
you figured out what you want to do, and the sticky note, the sticky note that you
yes.
put on that page has fallen off, or accidentally, like the dog got it or something, and you can't find it, but you knew it was red, and but you don't
Yes,
want to go through the whole book to find it again. I can't tell you how many times that happens to me, where or
no, it's really
yeah,
handy
where
that
you can,
is.
it makes it really, really easy to find it again. And the fact that it just builds on your skills as you go through each of the chapters. And
Yeah.
and of course the very first large project I made with crochet, and for people who follow Planet Pearl on Facebook saw this last year, um, I made a chevron Afghan for my mom with about 30 different yarns in it. I made it for Christmas when she redecorated
Uh-huh.
and requested a new Afghan, and which turned out really beautiful and got lots and lots of love. And of course, that chevron design is something that I remember from my childhood. I had a great aunt who made one for my mother, and was sat on our
Uh-huh.
couch. And of course, it was brown and
Oh, wow.
avocado and rust and gold. I'm talking
Yeah.
the 1960s here. So, is that I think there are a dozen different versions of chevron patterns in here, including a chevron made out of grannies, which I mean,
I know.
yes,
I love it.
which is just talk about a twofer. It's like a chevron with basically like a granny square type of
Yeah.
design. Talk about a throwback. I
Yeah.
looked at this and I thought, I just need some go-go boots and to poof up my
Yeah.
hair, and I'm good to go. So, yeah, so I had a real smile for that. So, but
You
anyway,
had a smile to yourself over that.
oh my God, I did, and I am definitely showing my age. So, um, I'm definitely showing my age.
I think the other aspect of the book that possibly other crochet dictionaries don't have are those decorative techniques as well at the end. The beaded ones,
Oh, and
at the end
sequins.
of the book. Yeah, we've got beads, sequins, um, and I've tried to show them in various contexts. I mean, I think, the beaded double crochet is really effective, and I think beads look beautiful on knitting, but I think they look absolutely gorgeous on crochet. And the photographs, things like the beaded loop stitch, I mean, that in real life just has such an amazing texture to it.
Yes, and the sequined
And the
loops
bead and the
too.
sequined loop. Yeah.
Yeah, because because there
You
could never be
probably
enough
wouldn't want a
bling.
whole.
You never enough bling.
No, absolutely
No.
not.
No. And these ruffles too, and the in the surface crochet, they're just really, really very special techniques to really up your
That
game.
they're just delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've put I might have run out of space for this, but really, I mean, they look amazing, clustered really closely together like that. I mean, you know, the
Yeah.
desire to just ruffle, to push your hands through them is incredible. But you know, they those sorts of things would also work really well as panels or edgings as well
Mhm.
to things. There's just
Yeah.
so much you can do with all of these stitches.
Yeah, it doesn't just have to be wave afghans, right? No.
Absolutely, it could simply be changing, you know, using one fairly simple stitch and using lots of either different colours or different textures. And you know, I think that's the other point with the book is that, you know, we want it to be a sort of stepping off point, and you know, a kind of reference as well as explaining, you know, which is what a dictionary would do, but also as the beginning of something else as well, possibly.
Yeah, and Candy says she teaches crochet at her community college. And Candy, this would be a great textbook for your students. This would
Yes.
be this would be great. You should have them go to the Planet Pearl bookstore though and buy them, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, but yeah, this would be a great textbook for that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, terrific. Yeah, absolutely. Candy, I just love you. So, anyway, so if you wanna keep track of what's new with Sarah, and Sarah is you're in every magazine over there in the UK. And it was funny when I went to because Sarah's on Ravelry, which you'd be surprised if Sarah wasn't on Ravelry. She's got a designer page over there. I looked at the magazine names and I thought, well, how come I don't ever see this magazine, UK magazines? We don't get all of them over here, unfortunately.
Okay.
We get a few, but we don't get all of the UK magazines over here,
Right.
unfortunately. We do get the Knitter now, and we do get Molly Makes, but we don't get too many of them. But so this is going to be the best place for you to keep up with what's going on with Sarah, and then there's some patterns that like from the Rowan website where you can keep up with that. So so
Yeah.
here's Sarah's page, which just happens to be under her name, which makes it easy to find. So you can yeah, that's nice. You can check that out. So and then also if you want to see what else Sarah's written, stop that. You can see Sarah's other books also here on Amazon. And if you don't, we're of course going to give away a copy of the book today. Sarah
Right.
is Sarah, and it's Sarah is Sarah hyphen Hazell. That's the Ravelry name. So there you go. And then let's see. Okay, so and then of course you're going to call your local yarn store if you don't win a copy today, because giving away a copy like always. And if you don't win the copy and your local yarn store doesn't have it, because we're all about supporting those local yarn stores, you know where you're going, right? You're going to planetpurl.com. You're going to click on books, and then you're going to slide on down where it just happens to be in the Planet Pearl bookstore. And you're going to click on this, and it's going to take you to Amazon where you're going to buy it. And we're going to get that little commission, which I think is like 5 cents or something, but every little bit helps, and it does help. And I think you're right. I think the Amazon price is really good. Is that it helps pay for things like this GoToMeeting interface. Um, yeah, is this GoToMeeting interface, which brings us all these great live events like today and yesterday with Louisa, and tomorrow we have Vogue Knitting's 60 quick gifts or 60 quick knits from America's Yarn Shops. So 3 last week, 3 this week. It's holiday craziness. So, and lots of free books for the rest of you, because we know Yeah, agreed. It's been a crazy week. So crazy 2 weeks. Lots of free books for you guys. So you don't want that to stop. So of course you want to buy it through the Planet Pearl bookstore because there's nothing better than free stuff if you're a knitter. So or a crocheter or just a human. We like free stuff. So, but thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. First
Oh,
visit.
thank you for
Yay.
inviting me.
Yeah, and I hope you'll come
Thank you so much.
I hope you'll come back. I hope somebody's knitting or crocheting something for you for Christmas this year.
Yeah. Do you know, I finished some commissions yesterday, and then as a little treat, I thought I'll do a little bit of simple crochet, and I was just started on an Afghan for my mum actually. So
Oh, that's
I'm
nice.
crocheting something for somebody else, definitely.
Yeah, anybody working on something for you?
I don't think so.
Well, I think your assistant Lily's in the room. So Lily, get going.
Yes,
You should be
Lily.
making something for Sarah. I want a full report. It's time. Get going, girl. You're running out of time. So I met Lily earlier today. Don't make me come over there. So
Lily, Lily has been the most fantastic editor that anybody could wish for, actually, Beth. I've already had my gift from her.
well, okay. Well, I guess we'll let her off the hook then. It was a
We'll
close
let her off
call.
the
It
hook,
was a
lol.
close call, though, Lily. It was a very close call. So anyway, well, you have a wonderful holiday season, and people in the room don't leave because you know what's up next. It's a book giveaway. So thank you, Sarah. I hope you'll come
Okay
back and
then.
talk to us about your next book. So
Okay.
take care.
Okay. Bye bye now.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.